WNST is our friend and partner, head coach Brian Billick, who joins us on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, would tell you, dude, this is the crazy, crazy time for anybody who was ever in your vocation, even when you had a good gig, right? There was somebody calling you about a gig, or you were calling somebody about a gig to move up, down, sideways, in and out. This is the coaching season, right, Coach?
Yeah, and it's a tough time because, as I've said many times, either you or someone you know and care about is going through a tough time because when there are the coaching changes, it's not just you, it's entire staffs, and even on a positive standpoint, you know, for those staffs and individuals that are being talked about for head coaching positions and how those are going to be handled, and then now you're displacing your family again. It is. I mean, it's a natural cycle. But sometimes you lose sight of the human element of it, and we'll go through another day or so of it. And I'm heading out to LA to do my show for Playbook. I think starting tomorrow, and then Thursday we'll finally begin to maybe talk a little bit more about some of these matchups.
All right, well, you know, we'll get into matchups, and I want to get into the Ravens, but the big meat on the bone for a guy like you would be you never went back and did it again. You know, I mean, you made a lot of money, you owed money on the way out. It was different for you than for maybe some of these coaches who don't have an extra year or two. For a lot of guys like Mike Smith and Jim Schwartz, friends of mine, Rex, we see him on TV now, taking some time off or some time away. I mean, I got Pagano, Caldwell, and Del Rio all fired within hours of each other. I know all of them, exceedingly well through here. Obviously, Marvin and what's going on there. Mike Pettin is taking time off. You know, all these names get thrown around, but you never went back. John Gruden's going to go back and take the Oakland Raiders job. And Coach, I went out and visited with Jack Del Rio last year, as I'm sure you know, and we swabbed the team for the bone marrow registry and all the stuff that we did there. That's not a real appealing place to go and sit and work every day. You got to love football to go back to the end of the airport at the Oakland facility there and go play in that dump for 2 more years waiting to get to Vegas. This is a fascinating decision for Gruden, and I think it really sort of moves the tectonic plates. You never did it, Dungy. A bunch of others never went back. This has got to be going through your head in a big way, huh?
Well, it's and I hear the commentary about it. First, I think John will do a good job. I mean, people say, well, the game has changed a lot. But keep in mind now, John Gruden's been right there. I've always said, even regarding myself when I was doing games for Fox the first 5 or 6 years, think about it. He sat in a different facility every weekend for 20-some-odd weeks, visiting with coaches, players, general managers, assistant coaches. He's going to have access just because he's interacted on a regular way, much more so than the typical coach who's actually still coaching in terms of how he'll put his staff together because he's been able to have direct interaction. He can have direct interaction right now, and it is not tampering because he's not part of the National Football League. So it's a huge advantage. And then in the off season, everybody knows he's worked tirelessly in the draft. He's immersed himself in it, particularly with the quarterbacks. Not that that's going to be a priority because he's got a Derek Carr. I think it's a good job. You're right. It's not the nicest of locations in terms of, but that's going to move as well. And John's young enough and obviously is going to have a passion for it.
What happened with you? Why did you ever get close at all to considering the? And at what point did you really cut bait and say after 4 years, 5 years, whatever that number is, to say, nah, I don't want to do it anymore? You know, because I think you wanted to do it in the beginning. Yeah, and probably should have. I think history will say if you truly want to go back, the smartest thing is to do what maybe a Jeff Fisher or a Mike Shanahan did, and that's just lay out for a year. I went right into the booth, and I don't know if that was good or bad, but it was. I thought it would expose me to a couple things in terms of, like I said, you're on different facilities, you're watching practice and all that kind of stuff. You know, for me, it really came down, and if I had not had a championship, I think one thing in common for all of us is we all have Super Bowls. The guys that have showed an inclination not to go back, with the exception of course, John now, and even a Dick Vermeil, that was a long, and Dick said it changed when he went back. But for me, it was a matter of the conversations I did have. There were 2 teams in particular that were fairly substantive, but I had to be honest with myself, and as I've always said, I had a pretty good first marriage, so to speak. and to compare that with Ozzie Newsome compared to what I was going into and what their priorities were and how they saw the vision for the organization, it just probably would have been a mistake. I remember Jimmy Johnson told me when I
got out and was doing games for Fox, and I was with Jimmy, Jimmy would say, look, you're going to want to go back, don't. He said, when I went back, Jimmy talking about himself, he said it was a mistake. I went back for the wrong reason. So, it's an individual thing. I think this will be the right thing. If indeed John Gruden goes, we don't know that for a fact. It looks that way. And I think he'll do a great job.
All right, let's get to the obvious here, the purple elephant in the middle of the room. And, I've been writing about the empty seats, Coach, and I know, that's one thing you never had to worry about coaching a football team was, we're going to, we're going to have a rebuilding year. Fans will still come. They'll stay with us. We just won a Super Bowl. Everything's cool. I don't need to worry about selling tickets for my owner, or that if we go 6-10 this year, that the fans are going to go away. I mean, they might get pissed off or whatever, but going away is a different thing. And I know you and I have had a lot of conversations off the air about what's happened here the last 90 days inside the organization. But certainly that 4th and 12 and that pass from Dalton to Boyd, a bomb has gone off inside of Owings Mills. You're very familiar with that. And I think for everyone, the suddenness of all of this, for John, for Steve, they knew Dean was leaving. I think Flacco looked stunned to me, just literally stunned at what happened. And I think this is a little toweling off period, but boy, they got a lot of pieces to pick up here. There's a lot of shrapnel here, man.
But you know what? And I commented on this, when I was let go, afterwards, I made a comment that, organizations are living, breathing entities. And there is always change. And the players know it from one year to the next. Coaches certainly understand it. Personalities, you grow, you flex, you condense, you this, you that. And that's just a part of it. And obviously no organization is immune to it. Change can be good sometimes, because it forces you to reanalyze and refocus. Dean Pease, moving on, really one of the good coaches in this profession, both in terms of schematic and strategically and tactically, a good guy as well. And certainly he'll be missed. But again, a major coordinator like that being changed forces a little bit of a change, a little bit of a refocusing, which sometimes can be good. So, and then obviously the Ozzie and his staff have to redouble their efforts to look at, okay, this is where we kind of fell short. They addressed the Achilles heel had always been the secondary the last few years, and they kind of addressed that. They have a lot to address. But they have the basics to where there's no reason to think that they can't regroup. The problem, or not the problem, but the challenge will be that having missed the playoffs for the last 5 years will bring about a scrutiny early on next year that is unavoidable, but they'll be ready for.
Well, how long's Ozzie going to do this? I mean, that the questions of how long this thing has been together, and even on the way out, you've acknowledged many, many times that there's a shelf life on all of this. We're now at 10 with John. We're at 22 with Ozzie, and then the Flacco and Suggs being key contributors to the team now, getting into their middle and upper 30s. I think there would have to be a thought in Bisciotti's mind of saying, are we going to win a Super Bowl with John again? Are we going to win a Super Bowl with Ozzie again? Are we going to win a Super Bowl with Joe again at this point?
Well, I mean, that's ownership and upper management always has to consider whatever variables they want to in that whole thing. With regards to Ozzie, I don't, and I have no idea. Ozzie and I have not talked about it. I think Ozzie will continue. He's certainly going to continue this for as long as he wants to continue with it. My guess, and this is just totally out of left field, is when Joe is done, when it appears that they're going to have to reshuffle that position. That might be a time, because I'm not sure Ozzie wants to go through that again, knowing that, finding that right quarterback is a major challenge. I think you saw Bruce Arians in Arizona leaving for a lot of different reasons. One may be, okay, I don't know that I'm going to be able to last here through the changes we're going to have to make in Arizona. We got to go find a new quarterback. Am I really going to sign on to the development of that guy? Maybe it's time for me to go. So that might be a catalyst at some point, but only Ozzie will know that. And obviously they'll continue on, and he's going to be there as long as he wants to be. There's no question about it.
What'd you make of the Ravens campaign on the whole, and certainly having that opportunity? I mean, I thought there was a pretty valiant effort to go from 4-5 and to beat these teams and to overcome the injuries. But I don't know that I've ever been more shook or stunned. And certainly, your loss back on the Colts game and the Peyton Manning 06 year, where the expectations were through the roof. But I never thought I was going to the ball yard on Sunday with the season ending, and I don't think anyone in the Ravens organization contemplated that as well. I found this to be a particularly distasteful exit this year, Coach.
Well, it's never good. You never feel good about it, particularly when you're favored. Losing to Cincinnati, there's no shame. They're a good organization. Marvin, very familiar. Marvin deserves kudos for kind of finishing out the way they did with all the transition they were going through. But there's no good way to do this, particularly when you start the season blanking them, and then you come back and you give up 31 points. That contrast. The injuries that they overcame, I thought it was very poignant when John talked about his disappointment. You're always going to be disappointed. I mean, no one wants to lose. But the disappointment for his players, knowing what they had come back through to get in that position with their fate in their own hands, he wanted that for his players. If for no other reason that they were getting a little momentum and you kind of thinking, you know what, this could be a little like 2012, legitimately or not. So, yeah, it hurts. So there's no good way to lose.
He is our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. You can find him out on Twitter at Coach Billick. He will be playbooking away at the NFL Network this week. And so let's get onward and upward. I mean, we've done the coaching carousel and everything that's going on. They are going to play some football games this week. I looked at this slate and I said to my wife, well, it would have been one thing to get on a plane and go to Kansas City and have barbecue, or go down to Jacksonville and take some purple with us and try to go have some fun and hope for a 65-degree day. But sitting on the couch and watching these games this weekend, I look through all of them and say, can any of these teams really win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, they can. Now, and we're barraging people with the fact that the 1 and 2 seeds and how prohibitive it is, and they typically go to the championship game, that the number 1 seed, particularly in the AFC, has gone to the Super Bowl in however many countless seasons. Of course, you're talking primarily about New England here. And the top seed, particularly in the AFC with Pittsburgh, a healthy Pittsburgh and New England, it's going to be tough because you're going to have to go through, for some teams, you're going to have to go through both. In terms of the NFC, a little more, to me, you look at, okay, what's the best combination of defense and quarterback, if you want to break it down? And there's niches, for instance, when you look at a team like the Bills and the Jaguars, okay? Jaguars, up to the last couple of games, look really good on defense, but there's still major questions about the quarterback, okay? The Bills, okay on defense, quarterback, okay. You look in the other NFC games. This is where it gets really interesting to me, because you have a contrast of a team, and I'm talking overall, not just this weekend, but you look in the NFC and you're going to look at a team like Atlanta and the Rams. Okay, Atlanta, even though Goff is playing great, Matt Ryan's been there, okay, and their defense is okay. The Rams' defense is outstanding. So the only question is Goff, and that's not his fault because he just has not had the opportunity. At home, they're going to be pretty good, but it gives you pause because you can look and say, okay, Falcons versus Rams. Well, Matt Ryan versus Goff. You look at the interesting one with the Panthers and the Saints. The Saints' defense is substantially better, and you got Drew Brees. Panthers' defense, very good. Cam Newton, very, very good, but has been a little suspect during the season. So when you look at that combination, yeah, I think the Saints are the team that everybody's looking at and kind of going, oh, boy, you better watch, because they're playing much better defense. Not league-leading, but good defense. They've got great balance in the running game. Alvin Kamara is Le'Veon Bell-esque in terms of out of the backfield. And, of course, you always have Drew Brees, that if it has to turn into a 45-throw game, Drew Brees is certainly up to the task. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of teams here that, and the teams that come out of this round are, oh, boy, we're going to the Super Bowl. You've seen it before, and then they go into the first or second seed next week, and they get their butts kicked. So, we'll see, but I think there's any number of teams that are going to have an opportunity to that you can go, well, I can see how this team could get hot.
Well, certainly in the case of Ryan or Newton, who've already been there, as well as Breeze, who's been there and has a pelt, for Goff being of that pedigree. The following week, the 1 and the 2 seeds, there's Case Keenum waiting for some sort of a home party to get the Vikings to the Super Bowl there. And then up in Philadelphia, they don't have their number one gun. So, it's a little different than I think it is in the AFC, where you sit and look at Roethlisberger and Brady and say, who's going to come and take them out next weekend? I think maybe in the NFC, there's certainly some validity and maybe even more of an open tournament on the NFC side.
Yeah, I mean, just let's list them by quarterback, not by team. You're talking about Nick Foles, Case Keenum, and Jared Goff. At the bottom end is Drew Brees, Cam Newton, and Matt Ryan. Now, when you listen to that, you're kind of going, whoa. Like I said, Foles could step up into the breach. Case Keenum in Minnesota at home could be very, very tough. We see Jared Goff looks to be the real deal, probably will be, but until he does it in the playoffs, we're not going to know. So you look at that lineup. Now, in the AFC, just flip it. On the bottom end, you've got Tyrod Taylor, you've got Marcus Mariota, who I think is very good, but still has a bit to prove, and Alex Smith, okay? But at the top, you got Tom Brady, Hall of Famer, you got Ben Roethlisberger, Hall of Famer. In the 3 spot, you got Blake Bortles, who's a little schizophrenic in terms of good or bad. So, yeah, at the very top, it's a bit prohibitive. From 3 down, a little more open season.
Why did Belichick get rid of Garoppolo while we're talking about quarterbacks and needing one and having one? I found that to be one of the wild stories of December, right? The fact that Lynch pulled that off, that Belichick did that, and now the 49ers enter the offseason. We're talking about the Raiders needing to hire a coach to take some of the heat off. 49ers didn't have anybody in their stadium 12 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think he had no choice, and I think he's heartsick over it. But here's the option. Let him go and get something for him, or keep him like I want to, and I'm speaking metaphorically, keep him like I want to, but Tom Brady's not ready to go. And in order to keep Garoppolo, I got to give him a mega contract. So how does Tom Brady feel, even though clearly, he's going to be the guy, but now I'm going to give one of these $100 million to Garoppolo because he was going to be a free agent. So I'm going to lose the guy because someone's going to give him more money than we could possibly give him, given the fact you can't have $200 million quarterbacks. And Tom Brady, even though they're class and they know how to handle it and whatever, that just doesn't go well, a.k.a. Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. Okay, I don't care how good the relationship is or how firm the organization is, that's going to cause some ruffled feathers. So you just didn't have an option to keep the guy.
Lots of coaches looking for lots of seats. Our head coach, Brian Billick, is here. He will join us in the seat in Minnesota in a couple weeks as we get out to the Super Bowl. And, of course, Ray Lewis is going to be going to the Hall of Fame and all that stuff. Coach, I'll give it to you here, and I'm sure we'll talk a few more times between now and Minnesota. But who's going to be in Minnesota when we get there? Who do you like at this point?
Wow. I always say, I kind of dodge the question. I'm really a good part of the media now because I'll dodge the question.
Opposed to when you were the coach and you were so direct.
Right. I can give you 3 reasons why each team will and won't go to the Super Bowl. In the AFC, as much as I love Pittsburgh, until they beat New England, how do you not pick New England? It's just history, and at some point they will. In the NFC, boy, New Orleans is intriguing. I think L.A. is intriguing. But I think, maybe it's just emotional, but I think the Minnesota Vikings playing at home in the Super Bowl is a very real likely possibility, and that could be fun.
And I already own a lot of purple, and if they're playing the Patriots or the Steelers, it works out well for me, Coach. So
you'll fit right in.
Beautiful new stadium they have out there. Hey, I'll see you in Minnesota. Hopefully we get together between now and then as well. We'll be following you out of Coach Billick, and you're doing the playbook every Wednesday through the playoffs, correct?
Yes, sir. Wednesday at 6 o'clock Eastern.
There it is, NFL Network. He is our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation and Coach Billick out on Twitter. You can find me out on the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month. I hope you check our morning newspaper out and check out the Ghost of Baltimore football, past, present, and future. Our series, it's also out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And if there is any breaking news at all, you will get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis will be here on Thursday breaking down said wild card games and many coaching angles and decisions and vacancies. Woo! It is the busy season around here as we start 2018, and I haven't even started talking baseball yet. Nasty at WNST.net finds me anytime, anywhere. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.